You know, we watched Los Angeles Chargers and the Bengals play the other day. They're two of those teams that are kind of trying to find their way, and each week is a new experience. The fact that Arizona has got through the last 3 or 4 weeks as well as they have, that's a really good sign. But they're still in a place that really the team as a whole has never been.
Week 13 is in the books. Week 14 is upon us. It's the hurry up. I'm Albert Breer from Sports Illustrated and the MMQB. And to help us break everything down this week, we got two good buddies of mine. On your right is former NFL head coach and former receivers coach, one of the best receivers coaches in the business, Todd Haley. And then to your left, you have an actual receiver, Donte Stallworth, former first-round pick. The Arizona Cardinals are 10-2, and this is less than 3 years after Cliff Kingsbury got there. That roster was a mess when he got there, and now they've had the wherewithal to win 2 games and 3 that Kyler Murray missed. Get Kyler Murray back in the lineup now. They can be the first team to clinch a playoff spot this week. All they got to do is win. They're the only team in the NFL that's in a win and in spot going into week 10, or going into week 14. So, Donte, I'll start with you. We have a couple teams there in Tampa and Green Bay that were in the title game a year ago that look like they're right back at the level they were at last year. Do you think the Cardinals are right there with those teams, or do you still have questions about who they are?
I don't think I have questions about who they are. It's been interesting to see them kind of, battle through these injuries that they've had with D. Hopkins and Kyler Murray. They've still found ways to win games. They've still, even though it's ugly, it doesn't matter. What matters at the end of the day, as Todd, I'm sure, can tell you, is that we have the saying in the NFL: a win is a win is a win. No matter how ugly it is. But you obviously want to correct those ugly mistakes, those penalties, things like that. You want to clean those up so you don't carry them into next week or carry them throughout the rest of the season. But they've been consistent. James Conner has been playing extremely well. I'm obviously happy for him and what he's been doing. He looks comfortable. He looks like the kid we saw in college. He's playing really well, and he's done a lot. Now, like I said, with all the injuries, he's kind of taking the team on his back, and that defense is playing well too. They get the ball back. I have them on my fantasy team, so they get a lot of turnovers. They score a lot of touchdowns on that defense. So they're a scary team right now. I think they're up there with with the Bucs and the Packers. I think they're up there. It's hard for me to kind of place them in front just because they're a young team and haven't really been in the championship. But I think they're up there, and obviously I believe they have the best record in the NFL. So it'll be interesting to see how everything shakes out now that they're starting to get healthy. You got D. Hopkins back last week. You got Murray back last week. And, those guys both had been out, I think, for 3 or 4 weeks. And they've been working together, off the side. And now that they're coming back on the field, it's going to be interesting to see how that all plays out now that James Conner is playing at an extremely high level that he is. And Kyler Murray fitting back in there and D. Hopkins healthy with the hamstring now. And the defense playing the way it is, it's going to be fun, down the stretch to watch them and see what they do.
Yeah, what's gonna be interesting about it too, Todd, is and I remember talking to Cliff about this over the summer and how he built his team, right? And they were 7-9 last year, but they felt that they were really close to being a 10-win team. And his whole thing was we needed to get more mature. We had too many guys that just hadn't been there before, so we wanted to go out and add guys to the team that we felt like could bring sort of this championship medal, right? So what do? They bring in AJ Green, they bring in JJ Watt, they bring in Rodney Hudson, they bring in all these guys from the outside. Donte mentioned James Conner. He's another one who came from a winning program. And obviously somebody you're familiar with, Todd. Do you think that that can sort of make up for what you're missing, and that this is a team that that's going to go into the playoffs with some guys in some key spots that haven't been there before? But you also have guys in the roster that have been there before and were brought there sort of with the intention of making the team as a whole more mature.
Yeah, I mean, I think they had a really good plan, and adding the guys that they've added and seeing Connor do the things he's done is awesome because he's an awesome kid, who's obviously been through a lot. He is coming from Pittsburgh. I still think, and you ended the last segment talking about the Chiefs, that they have so many guys on that roster that have actually been there, done that. They've actually gone to the Super Bowl. A bunch of them have won it. There's still a little different level there. I think any of these upstart teams that are trying to find their way, trying to be a good team, it's always difficult. We watched San Diego and or Los Angeles Chargers and the Bengals play the other day. They're two of those teams that are kind of trying to find their way, and each week is a new experience. The fact that Arizona has got through the last 3 or 4 weeks as well as they have, that's a really good sign. But they're still in a place that really the team as a whole has never been. I mean, a chance to clinch a playoff position. I was in Arizona in 2008, and we clinched the division with like 3 weeks to go. And Michael Bidwell, the president, put up a big giant banner, NFC West champions. And I'm like, what are you doing? And we laid an egg for, we went up to New England and got beat like 51-7 or something in the snow. I mean, it's a process. And that had Kurt Warner on the team, but it's still the team as a whole. Each week is a new experience and a new obstacle. Whether it's coming off a big win and now you're playing a team with a losing record and you got to win that game. Each week is a new obstacle for a team that's trying to come together and show that they can be one of these teams that's being talked about late into the season in the playoffs and Super Bowl.
And Donte, like it's kind of interesting because I think what he's talking about is like it's a little easier to be like going up the mountain, right, than it is to be up there and then having to stay there. So if you're Cliff, like, are there little things you're doing already? You know what I mean? Like you still got 5 weeks left in the season, but if you're Cliff, do you look at this and say, I got to start like working on a few things here to make sure the team's locked in, and I know that they're going to handle success the same way that they handled the process of getting to success?
Yeah, that's the tough part about it. I remember, back in 2007 when we got to the Super Bowl. It was, obviously my first and only Super Bowl that I played in. But I just remember that week, that week leading up to the Super Bowl, that bye week, I guess you call it. Just knowing that we were the last 2 teams that were there, and just how long the season was, and we weren't focused on that. Obviously, we were excited about playing the Super Bowl, but just remember thinking about how long the season was and how much we endured throughout the season. Just winning every game up to that point. It was a little difficult, but I remember, I was in my 6th year, I think, on that team, which in most NFL locker rooms, that'll make you a veteran of one of the more older vet guys on the team. But I was one of the younger guys on that team, and so those guys were just business as usual. It's a win, and then we lock that one away and move on to the next one. Like last week never happened. You learn from it and you just move on, and that'll be the test, I think, for Cliff, is to see if he can keep his team motivated. I know it's easy to say, and I talk to people about this all the time here in Washington, where you're saying, how can guys not be motivated? It's just human nature to need that type of motivation week in and week out. It's such a grueling game and a grueling process, and it starts well before September. This starts back in March, when you start training again and everything. So it's a grueling process, and Cliff's got to find a way to keep those guys engaged. They're at the top of the division right now, but this is the time right now where everything's going to start to shake, where people are going to guys that are at the bottom in the hunt, they're going to try to, make the playoffs, and people who are not in the playoffs, they're going to try to knock off the people who are in the playoffs, or try to knock someone off who has different seating. So every game from here on out is basically a playoff game, because you're fighting for your seating, and a lot of teams are fighting for their playoff lives. And I think, Cliff's been around a while, obviously, in around football. He's been around a lot of successful organizations, to where I think he understands that, and I think he'll have his guys ready. And like you said, Albert, he brought in those veteran guys, to kind of mature, to kind of speed up that maturation process for that team and that organization. And I think just watching them win those games with Kyler Murray out and with DeAndre Hopkins out and the other injuries that they've kind of fought through, I think that showed the difference between this year's team, the maturation process, and last year's team.
And, Todd, I think it's interesting too. Donte, I think what you're saying, I want to make sure I'm representing you right here, but like, I think what you're saying is human nature is to relax. Things are going well, right? Like, yeah. It's not as tense. It's like, all right, like I've earned this, and I can kind of like at least a little bit, like sit back a little bit. And I think, Todd, coaches are probably always fighting against that a little bit. And by the way, I do remember that snow game in New England. You guys looked cold getting off the bus
We
up
had
in
the
New
wrong
England.
shoes. Albert, we had the wrong shoes. We had folded
right?
cleats and wet snow. So the snow was sticking up to the shoes, so we couldn't even function. It was awful. I threw a lot of chairs in that next offensive game. Well, no, Albert, really.
I hope the equipment guy out there is not listening.
I had to ask Kurt Warner permission to swear and throw a couple chairs to make the point that, hey, we hadn't accomplished anything. But really, on that point, the more success you have, the more distractions. You've got more people that want to come to home games or want tickets. You got more interviews, you got more media. Everybody wants to talk about you, and that's the hardest field to navigate, in my opinion. For both coaches and players. But that's the line you got to walk and make sure that, whether you got to have a great PR guy, which I know they do out there in Arizona, but, not allowing guys to do too much, so that they can stay focused on their job. To me, the distractions mount the more and more you win and the higher position you get into. And that's what teams that have been there understand. Like Donte said with the Patriots, there were guys that have been there, done that. They yawned at it, but that's not the case for everybody. Even if you have some vets on your team, it doesn't mean there's been vets that have gone to a Super Bowl and experienced that, and they're not there yet. But that's going to be the step they're going to have to take. But just handling the distractions, staying focused, that's the key.
Well, yeah, Todd. So then you can answer this for me. Is the old legend about Parcells true, that he was fine after losses and he was freaking miserable after wins because of that?
Yeah, he enjoyed losses, and really, as a coach, your ideal situation is to win a close one versus a bad team. Then you can coach the heck out of the players. Yeah. But when you lose, you don't want to pound them into the ground. I mean, everybody's depressed and down, and when you win, everybody's happy, and you don't want to be a jerk about it. But yeah, he was much better after losses because he was. He walked around with a rock in his shoe just so he'd be pissed off all the
time. Donte, you ever have a coach like that?
Tech, yeah. Oh yeah. I'll never forget. We beat Washington 55-17, and he came in, and the way he cursed us out was like we lost 55-17, and but it kept us humble. It kept us humble. Like Todd said, the more you win, the more distractions you have, the more tickets you have to worry about, the more people that want to come to the games, the more interviews, and they may not seem like much, but those little things add up throughout the week, and it really it can get in the way of some of that preparation. It can get in the way of some of your focus, and for when you're supposed to be laser focused in the game. But yeah, Belichick would do that to us all the time. But it took me maybe a few games, but I understood what he was doing, and he already at that point had won multiple Super Bowls, so I was on the bandwagon of whatever he wanted to do because I wanted one of those Super Bowls as well.
Okay, so Cliff, if you're watching, the lesson here from Todd Haley and Donte Stallworth about a half hour before kickoff. All right. Walk in that locker room and flip the Gatorade over like Coach Winters did in the program. Get their attention because things might be going a little too well right now, right? That's the message here.
Yeah, Cliff's a calm guy too, man. So I don't, it's funny when I see him yelling on the side. I know Cliff. We were together in New Orleans for a little while, and he's been a buddy of mine for a very long time. So it's funny to see him like yelling on the sidelines because he's just so relaxed and so chill. But yeah, maybe he does need to go in there and throw some chairs and take some advice from Todd.
There you go. All right. On your right, that's former NFL head coach Todd Haley. You can catch him on Sirius XM Radio. And on your left, that's former NFL wide receiver and first-round pick Donte Stallworth. That's the hurry up for Week 14. Appreciate you guys coming out.